think Jesus was telling us, even in that point, if Satan's kingdom is divided against itself, Satan's kingdom cannot stand. Do you know how important it is for believers to be unified? Yeah. I don't know how many were in Sunday school this morning, but it was a powerful lesson on the table talking about love and how important it is for believers to love one another. Yeah. How you say you love God you never seen and you hate your brother who's sitting beside you. Hello, somebody. And so John was writing his letter not to non-believers but to believers. He was writing non-Christian but to Christians. Talking about how important it is for believers to have a mutual love for each other. Don't you know that if believers are hating believers, then that's doing damage to the kingdom? That's giving Satan the opportunity to infiltrate the kingdom. And I'm not talking about from outside, but from within. So if Satan's kingdom can't stand, if it's divided, then what about God's kingdom? The believers, we as believers need to work together and learn how to love each other. Let me say this. I'm human and you're human. There's some folk just hard to like. All of us have experienced difficult people in the body of Christ. I may be one of those difficult persons. You know, you may look at me and say, "Yeah, you're right, because you're one of them." It's just the reality. It's life. It's real people. We're human. So listen. Well, there may be people that I just really don't like so much and don't like being around them or whatever the case. But listen, what God says to Calvin is that I understand that you may be challenged as it relates to this person or that person. But what I'm concerned about, Calvin, is you may have those issues with that individual, but understand that your conscience ought to be pricking you and bothering you about not having nice feelings towards some person or another. You see, listen to me. What did Jesus say we ought to love? He said love. And I'm going to the enemy right here. And so he said love your enemies. I think that's important. Is that right? Yeah. And then yes, love everyone. Jesus, John 13, 34, 35, he said to the church, love you one another. As I love you. This is the way I get that you love one another as I love you. And because your love of each other is going to be the greatest tool that you have as far as being witnesses for me to a world that don't believe who I am. Do you know it's been over 2,000 years since Jesus Christ died and he rose again and went back to heaven? It's been over 2,000 years space and time that has separated us from that wonderful event that brought our salvation. But listen, know this, because it's been so long, it makes it hard for people to believe. Listen, you and I never seen Jesus. I talked about that a few weeks ago. All right. But the evidence that he is real is that he lives in our hearts through the person of the Holy Spirit. Chanel and I were watching a movie last night. I think the movie ended up watching me for it and went off. It's on Channel 10. They have some good movies. By the way, they have some good movies on Channel 10. PBS on... Is that PBS? Trinity Broadcasting. TVN. On Trinity Broadcasting on 10:30 on Saturday nights. So after I've done with my studies, Chanel and I, we lay there and watch a movie the best we can until it's time to go to sleep. So, but good movie. But anyway, this guy, he was a non-believer, and he was a guy, I think he was a former detective or in forensic science or something like that, but he was coaching a football team, and he was teaching political science or something in the context of the school system. And so what came up in the classroom is he was trying to tell people, teach his students, how to deal with use facts from 50 years ago, namely talking about President Kennedy's assassination. How can we look at the facts from 50 years ago and try to see whether, what were the details and the facts as it relates to President Kennedy's murder? And one guy said, well, that's been too long ago. We don't have enough evidence. How can we deal with that? Well, make the long story short, to just leap on over to the point I want to make, is that there came a point in that leader, that teacher's life, the coach's life, where a question came up about God, And they said to him, well, it seems like what students said, it doesn't seem like you believe. You don't believe in Jesus Christ. That's what the student said. And so the teacher was silent on the subject matter. But the students came to the agreed that he didn't believe. And so the student that asked the question earlier about how can we know something from 50 years ago, and he said, look at the evidence, and we can review the evidence and all the reliable sources that talks about what happened during Kennedy's assassination. What if we can do the same, use the same process and seeing if Jesus is real or not? And so one of the resources that teacher didn't want to use is I think there was an injury in his life. So but this is the resource that you and I have. It's been 2,000 years ago, and listen, the world is asking the same question that student asked that teacher. How can we prove that Jesus is real and it's been 2,000 years ago? Has anybody, is there anyone that lives in this generation, has anyone seen it? That's their question. All right. All right. And Jesus says that if the world is going to see me, then they're going to have to see me through those of us who believe in him. Oh, Lord, I think I got off script right now. But I know it's helpful. Let me have a bottle of water. Thank you, sir.
Go ahead, bro. Take your time. All right. Thank you. All right.
Okay? Y'all still with me? I may ramble a little bit, but bear with me. It's going to be some good rambling. And so there's this fiery red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns, 7 diadems. And listen, I did not tell you the devil is powerful. Listen to what verse 4 says. His tail drew 1/3 of the stars of heaven, and the stars are representing their angels. 1/3, his tail drew 1/3 of the stars from heaven and drew them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth. Remember the woman, verses 1 and 2? She's pregnant. She's ready to give birth. She is real. He's standing before her. She's ready to give birth to devour the child as soon as it was born. And so he waited. He's anxiously anticipating the birth of this child. Well, this text seems to be looking back in history. It seems to be looking back at an event that took place probably and more than likely before the world began, before there was an Adam and Eve in the garden. As a matter of fact, if y'all just give me a little patience, be patient with me for a few minutes. I didn't preach for 11 minutes last week, y'all. So I think I got 20 minutes to borrow. Hello, somebody. That was Chanel recalled. She said you preached 11 minutes. 11 minutes. All right. I got credit for preaching. We got some credit. Okay, and so go with me to Isaiah chapter 12. Look at verse 12, Isaiah chapter 14, I'm sorry. Isaiah chapter 14 and verse 12. I get that backwards sometimes. Isaiah chapter 14, beginning with verse 12. Are we there? Amen. How are you fallen from heaven, O Lucifer? That's referring to the devil. It's referring to Satan. Son of the morning. How are you cut down to the ground? You who weaken the nations. For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven, and I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation on the farther side of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High God. This is Satan from ancient times. And what the description that God gives here, that Isaiah gives, is a moment in history when Satan, Lucifer, which was one of the three archangels, Michael and Gabriel were the other two, this guy Lucifer, he was the guy that led the worship in heaven. Ezekiel chapter 28 verifies this. Ezekiel talks to the king of Tyre. Tyre is kind of in the northern region of Palestine, and this king was a king that got Ezekiel, as the prophecy is given to him. This king was more or less a person that was the earthly identity of Satan in his spiritual realm. And so this guy that Ezekiel described in Ezekiel chapter 28, this is somebody who was adorned with light. As a matter of fact, he was the guy who was around the throne of God, and he was the one that set the tone for worship around God's throne. He walked in the light. He was the morning star. The morning star. And so his presence illuminated the throne around, it was illuminated around God's throne. But this guy wasn't content being one of the persons who was worshiping. Matter of fact, Ezekiel said you were perfect in the day that you were created. That's what Ezekiel says of it. Perfect in beauty, perfect in the day that you were created. But then you got proud and pumped up.
All right.
And so what Isaiah describes here is Satan and his rebellion. And in his rebellion, a third of the angels who sat in heaven, a third of the angels who worship in heaven, they were cast down with Satan. Because as Satan said, I'm going to exalt myself, and Luke said, I'm going to exalt my throne above. And then verse 15, God said, you're going to be cast down to the earth. Cast down to Sheol. Cast down. And so Satan is booted out. And so I believe what we're looking at in Revelation chapter 12 in verse 4 is that there John sees an ancient situation that's taking place when Satan was actually cast out of heaven. But now let me qualify something. He cast out, but he still have access.
All right.
To heaven.
All right.
He's cast out, but he has access. We'll deal with that hopefully a little later. And so we see that his tail is drew a third of the stars from heaven and threw them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth to devour her child as soon as it was born. And so the mission of this dragon is onefold. And that is to destroy this child. He's sitting there, imagine. Well, I don't know how to really illustrate this. But imagine a woman who's there, in the hospital, and y'all ladies know it better than anybody else, and men who've been with the wife, a mother who's been with the daughter, whatever the case. The lady's there, and the child, the head is coming out. And the picture I get here is just like Satan sitting there like the doctor. With his hand. Saying, push. Push. Hurry up. Sitting there waiting.
Yeah.
So when I told you that this woman is Israel, right? This woman is Israel. Now, yes, is it Mary? I think Mary's got to be about, you can't overlook Mary, but the bigger picture is the woman is Israel. Turn to Genesis 3:15 with me.
All right.